Okay, so now I want to soften the edges and I want to bring out some of the face. So I'm going to start with the top flower here. I'm going to add the layer mask to it. And there are a couple of different ways you can do this, but I generally work with the gradient tool. You're going to find the gradient tool. You might have the paint bucket on the top. Hold that down and then you'll look for the gradient tool. So I generally work with the gradient tool and the paintbrush at different opacities at the same time. So I want to make sure my gradient is on a black to transparent. I just switched my foreground color to be black and that brought that up here. But if you don't see black to transparent here, go to the basics folder and look inside there. If you don't see a black to transparent, maybe you only have, let's say, like a black to white. I'm going to show you how you can change that to transparent and also why. So I'm going to take the black to white and I'm just going to show you what you do with the gradient, which is you click and you drag and it creates that like soft edge there, which is nice. But now I want to do that on all my edges. So I'm going to click and drag over here and it put it here, but it put that one back. Okay, I'm going to try going down here and it gave me a nice soft edge here, but it put that one back. So when you're working with black to white as a gradient, you can only put one gradient per mask. So that's why you want to switch it to the transparent. So again, if you don't see the transparent, at least choose black and white. And now click right into the gradient to pull up the gradient editor. And then go to the last anchor point right at the end, opacity stop. Click on that and lower the opacity down to 0. And now you have a black to transparent. So I often like to do this just multiple times and to soften the edges here, and then I'll go in with the paintbrush and kind of finesse it to be whatever I want. But that's basically was the look that I was going for. But maybe I want to get rid of some of this green part here. So then I'm going to switch to the paint brush tool and make that a little bit larger. And I might paint in at like a lower opacity here and just try to shape this to be the shape that I want it to be. And if I go too far, so I'm painting in with black on the mask. If I go too far, I'm just going to switch and then paint in with white. And then that brings things back. So if nothing else, it's a really good idea just to kind of do a practice to understand what happens with your mask when you paint with black versus when you paint with white, and just kind of going back and forth between the two. So you can see what it does. Okay, so maybe that's something kind of like what I want to have. So I want to get rid of some of the stuff that's down here. So just kind of going, painting. And so since I'm painting at a lower opacity, if I just paint over it once, it's only showing through about 50%, but I can paint over that multiple times until I kind of get the desired opacity that I want. Okay, so now I have some hard lines up here at the flowers. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to select that layer, add a layer mask, and I might try my gradient tool first and sort of see, do I like how that softens things? And I also might try working with the paint brush tool to kind of like go in and soften. I'm just trying to get rid of the hard edges here. And so I see that there's another one up here. I also have a little spot where there's no flowers. So I want to get rid of that. So this hard spot right here, so that would be this layer. Go and add a mask, and then I could try the gradient tool. So with the gradient tool, you're always starting outside of the image and just holding down your mouse and dragging in and then let go. All right, so you click outside the image, you hold down the mouse, drag in, and then let go. All right, and so then that's my gradient, and that kind of softened that area here. So I have still a little bit in this section. I have to kind of figure out where that is. I'm going to go and just simply paint that out. Just trying to get rid of that little bit of a hard line that I saw there. Okay, now back to the main flower. I want to bring the face in, the eyeballs. I might just lower the opacity of this layer temporarily just to help me be able to find where the eyes are. I see where they are. I actually think I want to move the main flower so that green's not right on them. Okay, and now I'm working from the mask. Make sure the mask is selected, and I'm going to paint at 50% opacity and bring in the eyes a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to move that layer back up to 100% opacity so I can see what I'm doing. And I see I got the eyes. I want to paint in more of it at a very, very low opacity, so I'm kind of almost just getting a much more natural looking gradient. In fact, I might even decide to go over more of the face and just try to bring in more of the face, so it doesn't seem too like shocking, like the eyes just kind of poking out, so on and so forth. Okay, so at this point it's all just kind of like up to your own discretion, you know, what levels that you want to keep. But I see like a little bit of this red poking through, so I might click on that mask and go, and let me see, I think I have to make my opacity go higher. Yeah, try to get rid of that. And then I see a little bit of a line from this, so that is probably from this layer, so I have to add a mask onto that and then try to, yeah, soften that line as well. Same thing over here, add a mask and soften that line as well. Okay, so you might want to use the gradient tool, but you don't have to. You can see that I'm doing an awful lot with just taking my paintbrush, and I'm making sure I'm always working on the mask and just kind of painting in at like really a variety of opacity levels, but most of the time it's like a really low opacity level. Maybe I just want to kind of lighten this a little bit more as well. Oh, that went down to opacity of 1%, too much. Just kind of, so it's a little bit more blending. Of course, I could also always just lower the layer of the layer opacity as well, if I wanted to try something like that. So our goal is to blend things. Now, lastly, what if you wanted to do something like, instead of just having everything sit inside the portrait, if you wanted the image to come outside and maybe have a little bit of the silhouette, all right? So what I did in this example here, if we go through the layers, I'll unclip them. Okay, so we have the big tree that has a mask on it, and then I have a cityscape that has a mask on it, and I have my portrait that has a mask on it. So I'll take those layers off, so just so you can see them. All right, so why does the mask look like this for this guy? That's because, now let's clip it back in. So I went to the mask for my portrait, made sure I was painting with black, and I started painting on that mask so that it would bring in the city. So let's see if I start. Oh, my opacity is just down too low. All right, I'm gonna get rid of some of this here so that I can bring it back and you can kind of see what I was talking about. Okay, so imagine something like this is the top of his head, all right, and the building is sitting in there. So instead of keeping the top of his head as the top of the portrait, I want the city to be it. So I'm selected the mask, and I am painting with white, and I'm going to paint along until I find like the city, the buildings that I like. And by the way, the reason that this background is red, when I'm working, I often like to work with like a bright red background just to help give me contrast so I can see my edges, and then I change it when I'm done. Okay, so just going along here and just trying to find the buildings, trying to find something that I like, and then I'm going to zoom way in, at least like that, switch it to black, switch my color to black, and paint, and now like go and touch that up. It's a lot easier to do if you're doing this with a tablet. Doing it right now with a mouse, and so you just want to get right in and touch up like all those little bits of white or anything that's showing. And I'll just try to finish this up quickly here. but you get the general idea, hopefully. So if you want to have that look of the building or the tree or whatever it is coming out of the head, I'll zoom out now. The way that you're going to do that is put that image on top of, clip it in, but then go to the mask for the portrait and basically paint it back with white, paint on the mask until you have like the buildings or the shapes or whatever you want revealed, and then go and touch it up again by painting with black. Alrighty, so the two basic principles we're working with here, and that I'm going to look to see that you're using on all your layers, is clipping and then layer masks. And you're using the layer mask not just to select out the background, but also to help kind of blend and make some like interesting transitions between the two. Lastly, don't forget you can also play with blending modes. So up here I have a variety of blending modes, and you can see that they change the way that the layer on top blends with the layer below. They're in groupings here, so all the ones up here make things darker, and the next section making things lighter. And then we have this section that is based upon light, and you get some like pretty cool ones here, and then some that are more kind of almost just like effects. All right, so try those out as well. All right, let me know if you have any questions.